Hello, fifth graders. Let's look at our word work. So we learned in this neck of the woods, or in somebody's neck of the woods, or hey, you're in my neck of the woods. This means when someone's in a particular area or part of a country. If you lay it on thick, it means to exaggerate, to over-embellish, to try to persuade someone that something is better, bigger, or more important than it really is. If you make a mountain out of a molehill, this means you're making a big deal out of something, to make a fuss, conveying something in a different way by overemphasizing it. So today we have another idiom related to hyperboles or exaggerations, but it's to think carefully about them instead. So this is a pretty common idiom as well. The idiom is to take something with a grain of salt. So you can say, take it with a grain of salt, or take that information with a grain of salt, or I take it with a grain of salt. So this is what it literally means. We have salt here, and it's grainy, as you know, little bits. So what does it mean if you take something with a grain of salt? It means to understand that something is not completely true or right necessarily, or to not take something too seriously, or to accept something with reservations, meaning to accept something but like with caution, like you're like, let me check first. So here's a sentence. I'll take anything my big brother says with a grain of salt. He has a habit of exaggerating things. So let's say you know someone in your life who's like constantly joking around and they tell you something. You're like, I'm not sure if that's true or not. I need to take it with a grain of salt. Or not everything we read, let's say, for example, on the internet is true. Sometimes people actually make up websites to promote false information. So we kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt that we read and make sure that whoever wrote the website is a reliable source. Okay, let's say we hear some information, we haven't really read it yet, like the SBAC information. We kind of heard, maybe we won't be taking it, maybe we will. So I kind of took it with a grain of salt, and we waited for official information from the district first to see if indeed we were going to be taking the SBAC. So these are some examples where you hear something or learn something, or someone tells you something, or you read something and you're kind of like making sure that it's right, and kind of like saying, okay, let me check, or not completely believing it, especially if the person or whoever tells you is always exaggerating or telling jokes or something. Okay, so take information or take it with a grain of salt. We're working on the prefix D, which means down, away, from, reverse. Decrease, to become less or go down to a lower level. Deduct, to take away an amount or subtract part of a whole. To take away part from a whole or a total. To descend means to move from a higher level to a lower level, to go downward. Today we have the word debunk. So this word is used a lot in the news because of there's just so much information out there that people can get via Facebook, TikTok, just random websites. So sometimes it's really hard to know what's true or not. And so then, because we have to take everything with a grain of salt, really, sometimes a lot of the stuff we read can be debunked. So here's a sentence. You can't believe the news you read on Facebook. Make sure your news source is real. I read something and looked into it, and the information was debunked. So what does it mean if something is debunked? It means to show that an idea or belief is false. So meaning it's not true. Okay. So this is something that people do a lot as they analyze the news or listen to information or get information. In the world now of social media and with so much information readily available, we have to really make sure things are true and right, take everything with a grain of salt, and just, check and double check and make sure, and check for all the sources and see if it needs to be debunked or not. So, for example, as a real life example, we just took a survey recently to see who wants to return to school, who wants to stay on distance learning. So we had to take something like a survey because we don't really know what people may want to do. So we can't move forward until we know for sure who wants to go back, who wants to stay on distance learning. We can't just say, oh, I think everyone just wants to stay on distance learning. No, that's going to be debunked with actual information, with an actual survey, okay? Now, we're working on the Latin root frail, fract, frag, which means break. We've learned fraction, a part of a whole, a very small amount of something. A fracture is when a bone or a hard substance breaks. Or if a group or country is fractured, this means that they are divided. And a fragment is a small piece of something that has broken off or that comes from something larger. This is a noun. So today I'm teaching you this similar, it's the same word, but it's an adjective. So if something is fragmented, it is broken. So this is an adjective, and it means consisting of several separate parts. Okay. It also means that something is disorganized or disunified. So we talk about groups being fragmented a lot. So let's say our country is fragmented because there were people who supported former President Trump, and there were people who supported the Democratic Party. So that's an example of groups being fragmented. This shows, let's say, a big group and all the different parts. Shows that a group or society or a group of people, a population, is fragmented. Sentence, we have a fragmented society with people who will abide by mask wearing and people who will not. So when something is in parts, in two different groups, or if something is a bit disorganized or disunified, when something's not quite all together, it is fragmented. Okay, fifth graders, good job on the word work, and thank you for listening to the very end.